This video is sponsored by Blueland. I have a bit of a special video for you guys today. This is another furniture flip for the bunnies. We have our sweet little rescue bunny Millie here, who is showing off the disaster of a dresser I'm going to be working on in this video. So for those of you who don't know, every few months usually I do a furniture flip for the bunnies. I take a crappy piece of furniture, give it a total makeover, and then myself and the rabbit rescue I help out with, we raffle tickets on the piece and all of the proceeds go towards the bunnies. I've had this piece in storage for at least 3 years that I can remember. It was picked up at auction. It is a total mess, and to be honest, it sat there because I didn't really know what to do with it. But when you've got motivation as cute as this, you know, now is definitely the time to try to turn this around. Stay tuned. My name is Angie and I refinish furniture. Sometimes I paint and sometimes I don't, but I always do what I can to save old pieces from the trash. Welcome to my workroom. Clearly I have my work cut out for me, but what we're dealing with here is a wood-framed laminate dresser. So the very top and the sides are laminate panels over wood framing. Now if you look at the end here, it looks like it's solid wood, but that's literally just, there's a frame around the top underneath that laminate panel, and it's hollow in the middle. Someone clearly had lopped off part of it, I'm assuming to try to fit it somewhere. I can't think of any other reason someone would do that, but it's gonna mean that I need to deal with a new top on this. In addition, pretty much every drawer has some issue with it. There are a lot of really bad repairs on this, as you can see. And there's some structural issues. We've got 3 drawer runners that need to be replaced, and the entire piece is just wobbly. It's just loose everywhere. So to get things started, normally I start with the cabinet, like the outside of a piece. Here I'm starting with the drawers because there's 9 of them and they all need work. So here's a perfect example of a not-so-handyman special repair. The top of this drawer face clearly snapped at some point. Someone probably pulled too hard on the handle and the top section of the wood cracked. This white stuff is silicone caulking and it's everywhere. I had to pick it out of the screw just to get the screw out to remove the handle, and then I had to very carefully pry the handle off without breaking it. And once I had the handle off, I then had to try to open that split again. Now, this is one of the very few situations where I'm glad that they used this and not glue, because they made a mess of it to begin with, but if this was wood glue, I would have a heck of a time trying to get this apart. But because they use silicone, it doesn't really stick very well to anything, and it was actually fairly easy to pry off. I was able to scrape off the silicone right back down to the bare wood, and I can put some proper wood glue on and make a proper repair here. Now, telepathically, I can already hear you guys thinking it. Why am I bothering to do all this work on this crappy dresser? I bought it a few years back from an online auction. I didn't really get a chance to see it properly, and to be honest, this is the type of furniture I like to work on. It's kind of similar to the rabbit rescue. I am always a sucker for an underdog, so to speak. I know that sounds silly talking about an inanimate object, but these are the types of pieces that get tossed, and I really enjoy the challenge of trying to bring something like this back into not only something that functions, but something that someone would be proud to have in their home. So I've got that seam cleaned up and have applied some wood glue. I'm using actual wood glue here, not something like hide glue, which is reversible and better suited to joints because I want a permanent, strong bond here. I'm using a few small clamps on the edge just to keep everything aligned. And a big thank you to Jeanette for this extra set of clamps in this size. I use a ton of them on drawer faces. Never seem to have enough, so thank you again for the Amazon wishlist gifts. Now you might be looking at this drawer face and thinking, well, that looks like chipped veneer. It's not actually veneer and it's not chipped, it's very smooth. This is a printed wood grain, meaning the solid wood drawer face underneath this grain looks completely different, and you'll see that in a little bit. So I still have a ton of drawer repairs to make, not to mention the rest of the piece, but I want to say a quick thank you to Blueland for sponsoring this video and making this possible. I was really excited about this opportunity. I'm always looking for more planet-friendly options. I opted to try out their hand soap, their fragrance-free dishwasher tabs, and a multi-purpose cleaner. Now these dishwasher tabs are so different than what we're normally used to having. They come in this cute little tin too. Yes, I sniffed these. These are fragrance-free, and of course, in keeping with this video being for the bunnies, not to mention how we try to live our lives, it's very important that these products are cruelty-free, which they are. Couldn't be easier. You just drop a tablet in, excuse the sad state of our ancient dishwasher, and you run a cycle. And I have to say, I was super impressed with even how clean the dishwasher looks after the fact, but the dishes were squeaky clean. There was no weird residue or film. The dishwasher itself smelled fresh. Now the hand soap and the multi-purpose cleaner, super easy. You get your bottle and that's your bottle. And you just order the refills. You plop them in, they fizz up, it's kind of fun, and you've got a lovely smelling multi-purpose cleaner. You're gonna see me use that a little later in the video, and then the foaming hand soap, which I really love. The refills are super affordable. You can even purchase your refills in subscription format if you want to. The products are really effective. I just love the whole concept of this company, right down to what they use for packaging. A side note, they do have an amazing website with a ton of information about their mission as well as the other products that they offer. Celebrate Earth Month with me and the bunnies and make the switch. All you have to do is click my link below to get 15% off your first kit. Blueland is sharing a special offer just for my viewers. So like I had mentioned before, the drawer faces are actually solid wood with a laminate coating over top. This is a printed wood grain. The wood underneath looks nothing like what you see here. In this situation, it's a fairly thin layer, so I'm just going to be sanding it off. So of course I want to clean first to make sure I'm not grinding any of that dirt and waxes and oils and whatever else might be on the front of these. I don't want to grind that into the wood as I'm sanding. I also sanded the entire drawer box times 9. Remember, there's 9 drawers here. Inside and out, top, bottom, everything. In the cases where there was some damage, like you can see here, this was that area that was a little bit, there was a sliver of wood missing. It wasn't a big enough deal to warrant trying to put a patch in or fill it. All I just did was try to smooth it out. I started with an 80 grit to get the old laminate coating off, then 120, 150, ended here at 180. Now this was the drawer with the most issues. You can see someone had literally driven a huge nail, by my standards, into each of the dovetails. I could have left this as is, but for me it was an eyesore and I just didn't want to leave it like that. So I had to carefully break everything apart. There were nails in the dovetails at the back, but it was still very well attached and I didn't want to mess with those. So I just split them apart at the front. There was a gap here that I needed to glue as well. So I just added some tape to hold it in place while I could get some clamps on there. And then for those little tear out pieces of the dovetails, I just added some wood glue and clamped those in place as well. To clean, sand, and repair all 9 drawers took almost a day and a half by itself with, clamp time and all that. But now it's finally time to get to the main part of this. We're going to start by removing the leg assembly. It's very clear that someone had taken this apart at one time. Everything is labeled, and it became clear to me as I was going through this that this had actually been repaired several times. So hopefully we can do a good enough job here that this will last a while without needing any more repairs. But it's pretty crazy sometimes when you see just how many lives furniture like this, even cheap furniture like this, has had over the years. Now, even though this is the same printed wood grain that was on the drawer fronts, scraping actually just helps make it go a little bit faster, the sanding that is. As mentioned, each drawer on the left side here, where parts had broken off, all 3 of these need to be replaced, so I'm going to pop these off now. And then I'm going to start working on tightening this whole unit up. If you remember in the beginning, it was super wobbly. So the first thing I'm going to do is tighten up any screws that are a little bit loose. And at the back side of the dresser, there are these corner blocks. Now the glue has failed on all of them pretty much, and the tenons that join up into the end pieces had also become separated. The glue had failed. Normally I would use something like hide glue here. I want a really strong solid bond. I don't want this to ever come apart again, and the way the joint is now, I think the rest of the dresser will fail before this joint. I'm also taking this bottom trim piece off. This is a section that is going to be painted, so I just want to make sure I get it nice and clean, and also having that off is going to allow me access to this section here, which needed to be repaired. Now that everything is righty-tighty again, I'm going to go ahead with some repairs to this. This is where the laminate panel was starting to pull away from the wood frame. I really like weld bond for this. I find it gives great adhesion for this fiberboard stuff. There were a couple spots I needed to do this, and then obviously just clamped into place. Now about this top, which as you know is cut too short, I did create a new plywood top, but my decision to use that is going to change in a bit. And out of this chunk of maple, made 3 new runners. This is pretty easy to do yourself. I have other videos where I go into more detail, so I'm just going to sort of zip through this. But if you have a table saw or know someone that does, that might give you a hand. These are actually pretty easy to make yourself. Not to mention being cheaper, and you can custom make them to the exact specifications of the ones you're trying to replace. You may have noticed there's no longer a back on this. I am going to be adding some 1/8" plywood panels to the back. Now this is part of a desk that I disassembled. You may recognize it. I used it in my office, I used it here, but I think that's what I'm going to use for my new top instead of a plywood top that I was going to end up having to paint. It is real walnut wood grain, but it is a very thin veneer, but it's a pretty beefy panel, and like I said, I have it in my office. My desk is super sturdy. Considering the top of this used to be 1/8" fiberboard, I think this is definitely an improvement. Once I have my new drawer guides ready, I added a little dab of glue to put into that back pocket, and I can screw these down and test them. Okay, so here's the situation. One of these handles is broken here, so I'd either have to recreate it or figure out something else. What I'm thinking about doing is leaving these 3 middle pieces stained, something that's going to match the top here, and then I'm going to be painting obviously the laminate because there's nothing else I can do with the laminate. Painting the laminate, painting these drawers. I just don't know about this one. This is kind of a Franken dresser. I don't have enough to put these handles on every single one, so what I'm thinking about doing is filling these holes, sealing these, painting these, and then putting new pulls on them, and then leaving these all wood. I don't really know what else to do with this. To cleanly trim this desk panel, I used a marking knife to cut down through the veneer, added a piece of masking tape and then redrew the line. Just to be on the safe side, added a straight edge and then used a jigsaw to cut through it. And as you can see, this helps prevent tear out of the veneer. I gave it a quick light sanding here before heading over and adding some walnut edge banding. This edge banding is pre-glued, so basically all I have to do is heat it up, make sure I get a lot of pressure to adhere it properly, and then I can trim it, seal it, tone it to match, and then add a top coat. To clean up this top, I just very, very lightly sanded it and added a few spray coats of lacquer, as well as a little bit of toner just because I found it a little bit yellow here on this one end. Now before painting the sides, I have to get it completely smooth, and in some areas that meant sanding through the laminate into the fiberboard. This had to be sealed before I started painting. These drawers have a thin layer of sealer as well. This acts like a primer so that I'm not getting paint down into the pores of the wood. This wood is also not going to be a bleeder, meaning I'm not going to have tannins leaching through into my paint. That's why I'm skipping a primer. In this case, the sealer is acting as the primer. I did 3 coats of paint in total, making sure to lightly sand in between. This helps cut down on brush strokes and also improve adhesion in between the layers, which I honestly normally don't have issues with Fusion mineral paint anyway. I added some gel stain in the color Nutmeg to those 3 drawers that are going to be in the center of the dresser, as well as the leg assembly and the handles. After the staining, these pieces each got 2 coats of easy vinyl sealer, a couple of light misting coats of toner, and then sealed with lacquer. Several days since the beginning of this, and it was finally time to start putting things together. I added some new soft pads to the bottom of the legs, and on the drawers that were painted, I had to drill new holes in the center for new pulls. Because this piece is older and had some issues, there's a few things I wanted to address. First of all, I wanted to keep the drawers slightly elevated and not rubbing on the wood here. These plastic guides here will help the edges of the drawers slide easier. It won't rub on the paint. The downside to that is it is going to elevate the drawer slightly and leave the tiniest little gap at the bottom. Sometimes being a perfectionist and working on really crappy pieces like this don't mix well, and I really wrestled with that decision, but I had to do it. I did put a thin coat of a beeswax oil blend on top of the paint. It just deepens the color, gives it a nice soft luster. Added these really pretty brushed knobs onto the 6 painted drawers, and then finished the inside of the drawers with that same beeswax mix. Now I did keep and sand down those 5 pulls that were still okay. This is the one that was broken. Someday I'll try to recreate a 6th one, and then I can use these on another piece. Now it's been a minute, but if you remember back in the beginning, those first few opening shots of this piece, you could see how every single drawer fit really oddly. Some were crooked, some had bigger gaps than others. That's sometimes the nature of old pieces. Each drawer face was a slightly different size, and for a neurospicy perfectionist, that's kind of like worst case scenario. But I have to remember the spirit of this video. This is all for the bunnies, and much like a rescue, sometimes the pieces you get to work on, you know, they've been through some stuff. So I'm not going to discount something just because it's a little rough around the edges or has some weird quirks. And I think Millie would agree. This piece is going to be raffled off on my Facebook page in support of 10,000 Carats Rabbit Rescue, the rescue that I help out with and foster for. As always, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the furry reveal, and I will see you next time.